Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first installment of ACP Live, a work in progress showcase and discussion series featuring our artist commissioning program awardees. My name is Kelly Olshan, and I'm the program manager of Queens Council on the Arts ACP program. Tonight, we are so pleased to present the work of Michelle Palmieri, this year's ACP awardee in music composition, representing the Maspeth-Ridgewood neighborhood. First, before we dive in, I want to give you a little bit of background as to why we're here and how this program came to be. Clearly, so much has changed in the last few months, but the essential components of our artist commissioning program remain true, and that is that our goal is really to democratize who can commission art. So rather than the wealthy elite dictating what new culture is created and celebrated, we solicit a cohort of local Queens community members, or art commissioners, as we call them, to decide which composers, choreographers, and playwrights should receive $10,000 commissions to create new work. Every year, we focus on 2 neighborhoods in Queens, and this year we're highlighting the communities of the Maspeth-Ridgewood area as well as Flushing. The artist projects themselves are selected by the art commissioners for their capacity to tell untold stories that resonate with these Queens communities. The stories highlight underrepresented protagonists, so in Michelle's case, elevating Latin and LGBTQ role models as lead characters that children can look up to and aspire towards. Of course, one of the main things that has changed is that we're no longer able to do this community-based art programming in person. So the art commissioners and I created this ACP Live series as a way to creatively problem solve how do we remotely, one, get hyper-local, highlighting the community arts organizations that make Maspeth and Ridgewood thrive, such as Supermoon, and 2, showcase these incredible works in progress that our artists have been hard at work developing. I honestly cannot say enough positive things about Michelle and her work. Not only is she an incredibly talented songwriter with a beautiful voice, but she's been such a pleasure to work with. I want to introduce you next to Art Commissioner Richard Morales, one of the Maspeth-Ridgewood community members that selected Michelle's project, Canciones for a New World. Richard's insights have been invaluable to this program, from helping decide what untold stories would resonate with his Maspeth community, to really diving in and working with Michelle to flesh out her ideas around how to use music to tell the stories of female Latinx protagonists. When he's not working with ACP, he serves as the manager of community partnerships at the LGBT Community Center. So, without further ado, please welcome Art Commissioner Richard Morales, live from Maspeth, Queens.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the premiere of Canciones for a New World. My name is Richard Morales, and as Kelly mentioned, I'm one of the artist commissioners that works with the Maspeth-Ridgewood group, and I'm so happy to introduce you tonight to our performers, Michelle Palmieri, who is a Guatemalan-born singer-songwriter, who is partnered with Enrico De Tricio, who is also one of the co-producers of the album, as well as co-writers, Canciones for a New World. So without further ado, welcome Michelle and Enrico. Please share with us your wonderful project, Canciones for a New World.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, Richard. We're super excited, super happy to be here, talk a little bit about our project and share a sneak peek and the work in progress. And thanks everybody who's connecting, who's joining us. We really want to share this project with everybody. So I started working with kids about 5 or 6 years ago, and I immediately fell in love with the work and with the idea of using music not only for music education per se, but also as an instrument to change awareness and maybe like ways of living. And that's kind of like how the idea for this project came to be. So Canciones for a New World is a bilingual song cycle for children. We wanted to write about social awareness and create representation by telling stories of Latinx and LGBTQ and create female role models that are commonly not portrayed much in children's music. that's pretty like the core of the project. The music value, do you want to talk a little bit about the production of the project?
Well, one of the ways of achieving that goal was to make a product that was appealing to a younger crowd, and it was compatible to what you would hear at the radio. If you look at what the scenario of children music is, it goes from nursery rhymes to educational music, and then just jumps to Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift. I mean, we have nothing wrong, not against Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift, but we feel there is a missing gap in between, the age 5 to 7, that would need to be filled with music that is as production value, that is, as I said, compatible with those bigger names, but still is, as teams that are more approachable for kids.
I think that's great, and thank you for sharing that. And I think one thing that really stands out about this project, and of course we at QCA and the Artist Commissioners have seen this project evolve in its various iterations. One thing that definitely stands out about this project is that while a lot of children's music tends to be very instructional and like how to do things, like how to be a better person or how to wash your hands or clean up after yourself. I find that there's a lot of music out there that's geared towards that type of like children's music, and your music can be enjoyed by multiple audiences of many generations. And I think that's one of the things that I think stands out about this work. And that also goes deeper into your own roots and where you come from. And so can you talk a little bit about those roots and the song, the Raíces song?
Yeah, for this song, I started questioning myself because I was born and raised in Guatemala, but it's been 15 years that I've been outside my home country. So I started having this feeling of a little bit of a split identity, and like, where is really home? Where do I fit in? I come from Guatemala, and I'm so proud, and my identity, it's built on that. But at the same time, I've been away, and I've been, away from Guatemala for such a long time that also it's part of my identity of who I am. So this made me think a little bit more about second generation immigrants that have Latin roots, but they grow up here. They come from very early age, or maybe born here, and have that idea of sometimes we don't give the cultural root the importance that it has, and how can we create a conflict in our identities. And so the idea of the song, it's about celebrating and really knowing and being proud of your cultural roots. So Mi Raíz, it talks about my cultural roots, and hopefully through that we can inspire kids to be curious about their cultural roots.
I think that's really great, and it's also super important that we continue to have these conversations also in places like Maspeth and Ridgewood, where the demographics might have been more like Eastern European or of a specific background, but we're seeing that more. And Megan Shantz, who is here representing and director of Supermoon, I'm sure can attest to that and talk about a little bit more the neighborhood and the feel of the Ridgewood area, at least. I'm talking about Maspeth specifically, but I think they're both tied together very closely. And so I think having these conversations on roots and identity is super important for places like Maspeth and Ridgewood that have people from multiple backgrounds. So thank you for bringing that story to the conversation, to the table.
So this next song, it's called Mi Raíz.
Aquí es de donde vengo, tierra del maíz. Aquí es de donde vengo, esta es mi raíz. Aquí es de donde vengo, tierra del maíz. Aquí es de donde vengo, esta es mi raíz. eterna primavera. Mira qué naturaleza, it'll take your breath away. En antiguo Guatemala, al pie del volcán de agua, todo el mundo se para a bailar. Elotes locos, el humo en tus ojos, coming from the crowds at every corner of the streets. Textiles, whippings, it's a color parade. The vibe is so right, such a beautiful night. The sun is almost down and everybody's here. Turn up the music, empecemos la fiesta. Aquí es de donde vengo, tierra del maíz. Aquí es de donde vengo, esta es mi raíz. Aquí es de donde vengo, tierra del maíz. Aquí es de donde vengo, esta es mi raíz. November 1st in Guatemala, celebremos el Día de los Santos. Vamos dando la abuelita, she's been cooking non-stop for 3 days. Ain't no party sin fiambre, aquí nadie se queda con hambre. But ain't no party sin mi gente, I can't wait. Y poco a poco se van volviendo locos y los barriletes ya se sueltan a volar. Viva la vida and this color parade. Glasses are clinking, the doorbell keeps ringing. The food is coming now that everybody's here. Turn up the music y que siga la fiesta. Aquí es de donde vengo, tierra del maíz. Aquí es de donde vengo, esta es mi raíz. Aquí es de donde vengo, tierra del maíz. Aquí es de donde vengo, esta es mi raíz. Aquí es de donde vengo, este es mi país. Aquí es de donde vengo, esta es mi raíz. Aquí es de donde vengo, tierra del maíz. Y es de donde vengo, esta es mi raíz. Esta es mi raíz.
Round of applause to Michelle and Francisco for presenting and talking about mis raíces, your raíces. So Michelle, I know that part of this project has been you being involved with multiple organizations or meeting with multiple people from different organizations in the Maspeth Ridgewood area. Can you talk about the partnerships that you have worked on developing? I know you and I have had extensive conversations around the LGBT community and the community center, but can you talk a little bit about some of the other partnerships that you have worked with or other people that you have met along the way?
Yeah, one of the missions of the project is to create and involve the community in the art that we make. So from the beginning, we were very clear that, and also because ACP and QCA, like that's their mission. So for us, it was about to make music and partner up with an organization, an art center that was on the same boat, on the same route. And I remember clearly that for me, it was Supermoon, like from day one. Like, it's not just because Megan is here, but like for real, when Kelly and I were still, like reviewing my application and Supermoon came, like the name of the work that Megan does, it's really amazing. And
that came up even before this project. When we moved to Ridgewood.
Actually, when we moved to Ridgewood
Art Center
and why I remember reading that in your application that was one of the places, and it's great. It's always great to see and work with an artist that has a clear vision and an idea and sticks to it. And you were very adamant about working with Supermoon, and you did it. And you why Supermoon?
I think I love, since I met Megan, so Supermoon, the name, like it was always in my mind. And I knew I wanted to work, with them. And then when I met with Kelly, it came from Kelly. Kelly's like, I know the owner of this place. She's like amazing. She's brilliant. Supermoon. And I was like, what? This is like meant to be. This is really meant to be. So we wrote in the application because this was like, yeah, this is really meant to be. So the world premiere and everything was thought out to be with Megan, with Supermoon, with partnering with her. Mm-hmm. And because, COVID pandemic, we are not, able to do the concert that we wanted to do, the live show that we wanted to do. We started to looking into different ways in which we could partner and talk about the project and collaborate. So we reached out to Megan and we went there. We talked to Megan, like it was amazing. We talked about the project and having new inputs and new insights of the project. Like it was tremendous for us. It was beautiful.
And Megan is joining us here, Megan Shantz from Supermoon.
Hi everybody.
So we went to Supermoon and we did a little video about the beautiful work that Megan does and Supermoon. So this is what we're gonna see next.
Is there a way to define connecting with other people as art? What is the art in making connections? I was really curious about that, and I still am. My name is Megan Shantz, and I'm the owner of Supermoon Art Space. Supermoon is a community art center and also an early childhood program, which is at the core of what we do. I come from a theater background. I came to New York about 20 years ago to study theater and make theater, and spent about 10 years making theater with all different types of artists, devising original plays and performance events, and really just showing our art to each other. And after a while, it started to feel a little insular, and I wanted to find a way to connect more with a wider variety of people. I went back to school. I studied art education. Over 3 or 4 years of getting my master's degree, I started to really cultivate an identity as a teaching artist, community-based artist, and start to really redefine what art making is and what the relationship was between art and community. I spent several years teaching art, visual arts, in public schools and working in different community organizations, alternative programs, devising programs, really just working to bring art making and collaboration to as many groups as I could, and all the time continuing to cultivate my own identity as an artist and a teaching artist. And then I moved to Ridgewood. I started working with a community-based organization here and meeting people that grew up in this community. And so it was very clear to me what my identity as a homeowner and a transplant and a gentrifier meant, in contrast to these people who had grown up here. And so I became very conscious about what types of projects I engaged with and what choices I made and how I could make choices in a way that was responsible and was really serving the community and bringing an awareness, a full awareness of who lives here, what is already here, and how can I tap into that rather than putting something on top of what was here already. The more people I met, the more it became clear that there was seemed to be a gap, a missing link in terms of spaces, gathering spaces, places where people could come together and meet each other across disparate groups. As far as independent projects, there weren't a lot of that, especially projects that were family-oriented. So that was my mission when I opened Supermoon. The whole program is designed to reach out to families in our community and artists in our community and provide a space to gather and collaborate. I'm super excited to be collaborating with Michelle because she lives in this community, and I love working with artists that are already here in the neighborhood. I love that she is bringing another cultural perspective. I feel like for me, anytime I can meet someone and work with someone that is coming from another place, it just broadens my sense of what it means to be an artist and to collaborate. And I love that Michelle is using this opportunity to make art that is teaching and opening up ideas and asking questions and asking people to reflect. Most importantly, the fact that this work is being designed children and for families. That's really near and dear to my heart. I'm really excited and grateful to have this partnership and to be a part of the work that she's doing.
Thank you all for sharing that, and thank you, Megan, for sharing your space with us. I know right before, I want to say like March 13th, it's like the day, right? Friday the 13th. Right before then, we were able to visit Supermoon, and you gave us a really wonderful tour of the space and talked about, you know, things that you all were working on, and you know, obviously we would like to host these types of events in person, but for the time being, you know, we're reaching to you from our screens in multiple areas. But I think, you know, you're doing an amazing job in working with the younger communities of Ridgewood and the arts communities of Ridgewood. I know you serve as a space also that's an incubator for artists, and that's super important to have, especially in times like this when, you know, space is very much needed for our production. So we have the second song that we're gonna get into, the Ya Lo Digo Yo song. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that song, Michelle and Enrico, and walk us through what we're about to experience.
Yeah, so another topic that we wanted to write about is female role models. And growing up, I was very fortunate that I had brilliant, strong, loving women around me all the time, and that I looked up to and I admired. So my grandmother was a very significant role model in my life. So I made this song for her, and it's called Ya Lo Digo Yo.
And there was also conversation that we had about the fact that you know, second generation immigrant may not ever know their grandmother. It's like it's a figure that they are not familiar with. So that was one of the other reasons why we decided to pursue this song.
I want to ask you a little bit more about that song, but I think we'll wait towards the end in the panel discussion that we'll have. So for anyone that's tuning in now, we're talking with Michelle Palmieri, Megan Chance, and Enrico De Trizio, who are presenting Canciones for the New World, as well as Megan, who's from Supermoon. But feel free to leave any questions and comments. We love to hear feedback, so feel free to leave any comments in the chat box too as well.
Desde que era muy pequeña, since I was a little girl, antes de poder siquiera caminar, me contaba de aventuras de dos enamorados, historias of my parents antes de mí. Para mi quinto cumpleaños, she gave me this little wrinkle book, el libro de las recetas of my family. Tamales, enchiladas, son dos fiambres, juntas hemos cocinado en cada momento y a cada paso. Me decía, el amor con amor se gana. Me decía siempre mi abuela. El amor con amor se gana. Y ahora ya lo digo yo. Y ahora ya lo digo yo. 10 veranos ya pasaron. Now you get on with the homework. Porque ahora todo de repente se complica. Se sentaba y me distraía contándome sus historias de New York. Y entre cada cafecitos y pastelitos, me decía. Cuando seas grande te vas a acordar de estos momentos. Sueña alto, llega lejos. El amor con amor se gana, me decía siempre mi abuela. El amor con amor se gana, y ahora ya lo digo yo. El amor con amor se gana, me decía siempre mi abuela. El amor con amor se gana, y ahora ya lo digo yo. 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 Ahora que no soy tan pequeña, seems 100 years have gone, y que ya te cuesta caminar, yo te cuento de aventuras y de mis enamorados, historias of my life en Nueva York. El amor con amor se gana, me decía siempre mi abuela. El amor con amor se gana, y ahora ya lo digo yo. Y ahora ya lo digo yo. Y ahora ya lo digo yo.
Welcome back. That was an amazing song. And yes, we can all learn, I mean, those of us that can, from our grandmothers or our abuelas. I know personally, mine is no longer with us, but, you know, as a person from Puerto Rican descent, my grandmother was someone that didn't know how to read or write. She was a Black Puerto Rican that came to New York and started working as an essential worker, what we would call an essential worker now, at a hospital, which I won't name. But definitely a lot of the work that I do is inspired by her, you know, and I see that in this song that you just presented to us, how your grandmother has influenced your work and what you're doing. And I'm sure Enrico, the same for you too. I just want to mention a couple of shout outs. You have Josefina Fuentes Bagud from who says congratulations from Guatemala. You have Ventas Varias, who says congratulations, Michi, excellent project, excellent performance of both. Children will learn about life, about friendship, and other cultures in a very wonderful and joyful way. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
Give some shout outs from the audience. So keep them coming. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the next song, With Your Day, and how was your day?
Before we go to that, I just wanted to piggyback on something that you just said. Those songs are really just a prompt to begin a conversation. So, you know, for Michelle was her grandmother, but it just the idea of having somebody outside of the mainstream media that is not just, you know, Superman.
Yeah.
It's like it can be somebody in the corner store, somebody that you can actually have a relationship with that becomes your role model. So that was the idea behind the songs, and you know, it ended up being Michelle's grandmother for this specific song. But that was the idea behind having this theme.
So the third song, this next song, this one, it's called With Your Day. And the idea behind the song, it's about self-care. And it's about healthy things, little things that you can do in your day, that you should do in your day to be more happy, to have a healthier life. And when I started writing this song, it was little things like hug somebody, drink water, dance, or listen to the song that you really like those little things that we enjoy during our day. And we also have the opportunity to have a conversation with Megan about this. And this is the type of feedback that is just, it makes our project better and it helps us look, in different ways and have the concepts a little more round.
Yeah, kind of really, actually, this song in particular really focused after we talked to Megan about it, because the song kind of started a little bit educational, and I think it was too educational per what we said before. Like, you have to eat your veggie, and
which you have to,
drink water, stuff like that. But then we talked to Megan about it, and we realized that what we really were after was this idea of self-care through small gestures that each one of us has. The idea that you don't have to go to, quote a dear show of mine, you don't have to go to a $50,000 yoga retreat to feel good about yourself. But during your daily routine, your daily life, something as simple as smiling to somebody, or like drink a glass of water, can actually be extremely beneficial. And especially for us living in New York, we always complain about the routine and like how hard it is, and we want to take 17 vacation a year, which of course we cannot afford. But then you come back to New York, and you are back where you were. The stress is very high. So we really want to change the behavior and the way we think about self-care, not necessarily tied to, exactly like I said, spas.
This big concept of
go on huge vacations, but little gestures.
Yeah, and I think this little gesture opens up to a bigger conversation too, because we could have a completely separate conversation on food justice and access and who has it and who doesn't and things like that, and even things that we might take for granted, such as having access to clean water. We're still seeing this play out in Flint, Michigan, right? So we can continue to have that conversation, and I'm glad that projects like this and arts exist in these ways to open up the door for those types of conversations. And so,
and that works also for us. Like, for us, it's a learning experience, because like you said, once you put out in the world the message, then you start thinking about yourself and about your habit. So we grew a lot just by writing those songs, and we're still growing by writing the new ones.
I can't wait to listen to it, and I'm sure that our viewers can't wait to listen to it. So I don't know if are we ready?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
This is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. I think just having this time to break my normal routine, and really stop and think about, like, what do I do for myself? Like, how do I care for myself? And it's not something I think about a lot, or invest in a lot. And to be honest, it's still something I'm working on. Like, I don't have like a recipe, but I feel like for me, it's really just like, it's like an awareness, For me, it's about being aware that I have a relationship to myself and I can care for myself. And even if it's something small, like eating an apple, drinking some water, just like going like this for a second, and touching my heart, like little things. I think when you start to realize these little tiny things, it's almost like a little game, It's like a little special thing that you have just for yourself. It's not a yoga class. It's not like a big public thing that everybody knows about. It's like, this is my little thing that I do.
Right.
I think that's a really special, it's a special thing to cultivate, And I think I think children do it naturally, right?
Absolutely.
Like, children are naturally always finding pleasure in whatever they're doing, but adults sort of lose touch with that. So it's really just a sense of playfulness and a sense of almost like intimacy with yourself and knowing yourself and being connected to yourself. I feel like your song really cracks that open for people. You know, it's not telling people what to do. It's more just reminding people to like think about it, you know, and have that awareness. So it's really nice.
What are you doing with your day? What are you doing with your day? What are you doing with your day? With your day today? With your day today? Have you said hello to a friend? Did you give any hugs today? Did you make somebody smile or heard a joke and laugh aloud? Have you played that song you really like? Let me see a celebratory dance. I hope you had a good night rest, 'cause today will be the best day. What are you doing with your day? What are you doing with your day? What are you doing with your day? With your day today? With your day today? Have you been outside in the sun? Did you exercise just for fun? Think of all there is out there. Anything new you wanna learn? Did you invent a new recipe today? Are you drinking a lot of water in the day? First your greens, then the rest. Make the day into the best day. What are you doing with your day? What are you doing with your day? What are you doing with your day? With your day today? With your day today? What are you doing
I wanna
with
water my
your
plants.
day?
I wanna play with my dog.
What
wanna
are
sleep.
you
I wanna read a
doing with
book.
your day?
I wanna be with my daddy.
Doing with your day?
I wanna jump.
With your day
I wanna
today?
dance. I wanna
With
sleep.
your day today?
Have a nap.
What are you doing with your day? What are you doing with your day? What are you doing with your day? 'Cause today it's gonna be the best day.
Hi, welcome back. That was so beautiful, Michelle. I honestly have been so impressed with your ability to translate your live performance practice into what has turned out to be a super compelling music videos.
Thank you.
Yeah, really incredible. Thank you for sharing. So for those of you who are just tuning in now, I want to introduce my fellow Zoom panelists here. So my name is Kelly Olshan. I'm the program manager of Queens Council on the Arts Artist Commissioning Program, and I'm joined here by our very own Michelle Palmieri, ACP awardee in music composition representing the Maspeth Ridgewood area, as well as Richard Morales, who is one of the art commissioners that selected her project to receive a $10,000 commission. And finally, Megan Chance, who is the director and founder of Supermoon Art Center in Ridgewood, which does a lot of incredible work in that community and has been such a valuable asset and partner as we flesh out this project. So I want to start with Richard actually just by asking what it was like to review and ultimately select Michelle's project. Not a lot of us have the opportunity to decide what culture is created for your community, and it's something that I think is unique to ACP. Can you talk a little bit about what stood out to you about Canciones for a New World when you were reviewing and voting to select her project?
Sure, and thank you once again to Michelle and Enrico for the wonderful music that you shared with us tonight, and Megan and Queen's Council on the Arts for hosting this event tonight and having programs like this that are really important for the development of artists. As someone that works daily, working with different artists and commissioning different projects for the work that I do at the LGBT Community Center, this wasn't an easy selection. There were about 19 different applicants that we had to choose from, and it wasn't just myself. There are about 6 other people that were also involved in this process. And, I think obviously when you have multiple hands in one pot, like people tend to go like for this person or for that person. And I think with Michelle's project, what really stood out about it was that it was speaking about an experience that we don't often hear a lot about, especially when we talk about LGBTQ communities and Latinx communities. It's a pretty taboo topic still to this day in 2020, where, we're still seeing a surge of homicides in Puerto Rico of transgender women. We're still seeing violence committed against queer communities throughout the world, not just in Latin America, throughout the world. In our own backyard, this is happening. This is why we're having a response to what we're looking at right now with Black Lives Matter, Black Trans Lives Matter movements, and things like that. So it's really important to have these kinds of conversations in spaces where you least think of it. I think oftentimes, especially for people that are outside of New York, they think of like New York City, and they think of New York City as Manhattan as the beacon of culture, right? Where we have culture in our own backyards, and we need to support those organizations as well, like Supermoon, like Queen's Council, like Knockdown, or any of the other Queens-based organizations. And I'm sorry if I'm not naming them all, but I think
You would be here all night.
I know it's like a long list, but I think really what stood out about this project was that it was speaking about topics that we aren't typically hearing on a day-to-day basis. It was also presenting something, it was talking about children's music, right? And like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, sometimes children's music can be very didactic about how to do things and what to do, and this was presenting a fresh take. I know part of the proposal was addressing the fact that the popular music that children are looking at these days tend to objectify women or talk about things in a very stereotypical way. And this seemed like, based on the project description, that it was pretty clear what Michelle wanted to do. And also just the application itself was very strong in terms of like what the work samples were. And I think it was felt through the paper, like the paper application or the digital application. And that's one of the things that, at least for me, like really stood out. And just the fact that the follow through is very important too, because, there was a clear breakdown of what organizations Michelle wanted to work with, what the funds would be used for, and what essentially the project is. And the clarity of it was really strong. And that for me tied to some of these topics that are also for me, at least personal, as someone like that identifies as a queer Puerto Rican New Yorker, that I was like, I think that this is a conversation that I didn't have when I was growing up. And I can only imagine what younger audiences today are experiencing with these types of topics. So that was for me what drove me to select.
Yeah, for me, when I was first talking with Michelle prior to her even submitting an application, it was when you started to talk about using art to create role models that don't exist in American culture. It's when I started to get really excited and feel like you were such a perfect fit for this program or project. And for the record, I do not make the decision as to who gets the grant or the commission, but I did always, like, even in our early conversations, feel like you were a really great fit for ACP.
Thank you.
So clearly, if we compare that moment to now, so much has changed in the world. Richard, Michelle, can you talk a little bit about how this project has changed or evolved since its inception, either because it's an artistic work and these things evolve as they start to develop, or because the world has changed profoundly since when you first proposed it?
I think in different ways. Definitely, the idea was in our minds and what the project could be. But then the more you dive in and you start talking to people and sharing the idea of the project, um, we started to think also what was the best way to present the song. What's the best way of talking about female role models, but also that talks to from my experience or from our experience, so that we can share it and portray. So I think that's been a wonderful process and a journey of really diving into the topics in a more concrete way, and how are we gonna write about them.
Right.
And also like COVID like happened, so that was a big thing for I mean all ACP artists, all art in general. But since this project was always thought to be a live concert, the live element was key, I guess. I think because the interaction with the kids, like we really want this to be not just the songs, but like a whole project. So not just singing, but talking to the kids, having the audience, be involved. So it's been definitely, we're still figuring this out. How can we make virtual content that is not one more video, or that it gets grown-ups and kids involved and starts these conversations, and how can we do that? Like, what's the best way? So it's been exciting, definitely, because we're trying things and we're experimenting, and also in how the music sounds. Definitely, that speaks to that as well.
Yeah.
I agree with what you said too. I think art is almost like a science in a way, where you're experimenting with things, and some things land and work, and some things are like, well, that totally didn't work at all, and nobody got that or anything. In terms of like what I've seen with the project itself, like we've seen some iterations of some of the songs. I think the acoustic versions of it. So I've definitely seen the production value go up a bit more, especially with the addition of different vocals or rhythms that weren't in the acoustic portion of it. So, part of the commissioning program is also working with the artists for over, about a year to develop the project. So it was great to see the first iteration played in like an acoustic setting, with the microphone right there and everything. So that, and also, when we first started this journey, we did not anticipate a pandemic hitting us all. So I've definitely seen the evolution of the project move from a live event to, meaning live in-person event, to a virtual setting, which, I think also has its advantages of reaching people that are outside of the Queens, New York community, and things like that. So what we're seeing right now are 3 songs of a full album that has multiple songs. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this project develops, from these 3 songs that we see, and the other ones that we know are on their way or that are already developed. So, just want everyone to stay tuned for the evolution of that. And soon we'll hopefully see it live in person.
Hopefully.
Yeah. You make a good point about the sort of hidden silver linings of COVID, and that you're right, we are able to expand the reach by doing this digitally. We have people dialing in from Guatemala right now, which would not have been possible, or at least planned in the previous iteration of this program. And, as a program manager, I'm certainly, as I know you and Richard and Megan are as well, just thinking about how to translate what we do to the virtual space so that we're still able to share this work and support our communities, and create something that is hopefully engaging, even though we're on a screen. Megan, you have been doing so much incredible work through Supermoon, to sort of transition to not just the arts or your daycare facility, but to really serve your community in this time of need. Can you talk about how your life and how Supermoon has changed and evolved in a post-COVID world?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was very hesitant to turn everything into a digital or virtual product. I've been very cautious about that. We didn't really put out a lot of content that was digital. The teachers kept in touch with the students via Zoom, but it was really just once a week. And then I played around with making a little TV show, but that was really just for the kids that were enrolled in our program. But as far as a space and that has an identity that's larger than just the early childhood program, I was really hesitant to just make it virtual or make it digital. And because my business is something that at the core, the identity of what we're doing is about people coming together and sharing an experience and sharing physical time and space. And I do think, I mean, this, for example, is a perfect example of how it can function in a digital sphere, but it's a very, you guys have created something that's very sophisticated. And as a sole proprietress, I wasn't prepared to do that. And I really didn't want to just jump in. My instinct was to try other formats. How can people still feel like they're physically connecting if we're not allowed to spend time together? So I spent time just setting up experiments. How can people weave into the fence outside of our building and leave little artifacts showing that they've been present, and watching those pieces accumulate was really exciting. Or plant seeds in our garden and watching the garden grow at the hands of different neighbors coming and participating was really fun. And it was gratifying to know that, okay, we can still connect in ways that don't involve a computer or a phone, but we're keeping a safe distance. And so that, for me, that was really fulfilling. And I'm still curious about that. Or mail art, sending little pieces of art and hooking people up anonymously and having them send pieces of art to each other. So there's so many ways that people can connect that aren't virtual. So that's something that's been on my mind. But also connecting with our mutual aid network and our Ridgewood Tenants Union and using the space to serve their work has been really fulfilling as well. So again, we're able to continue being safe, but branch out and find new ways to serve our community and to stay alive and awake. It's been interesting to just explore and experiment and not feel the pressure to do what everyone else is doing.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I was really excited by an idea that you had around a pseudo socially distanced world premiere. I believe you were talking about the idea of Michelle performing inside at Supermoon, but enabling the glass wall outside your space so that literally the neighborhood in the block can gather and see her and hear her,
Yeah.
but not be within 6 feet.
I think that we're going to try it. I'm hoping in the fall that we can. I'm thinking of calling it the Fishbowl series because our space really looks like a fishbowl when you, especially at night when the lights are on and it's dark outside. If the shades are up, you can just see it's like a beautiful proscenium. It's almost like a pseudo screen actually, but it's reality. So it's kind of a fun way to play with the format, and we've got a couple of things in the works that we're experimenting with, but it's not ready yet. But it's something to keep an eye out for sure.
Yeah, let's talk about that, and people can stay tuned for the actual, like the final premiere of the full album, Michelle's work, which hopefully will look something like what we just described with Supermoon, as well as potentially live streams. So Megan, you mentioned the work that you're doing with the role of mutual aid, and I know you're thinking a lot about how mutual aid can play a role in art making. All of you are cultural workers and community advocates that are thinking about this. How do you think that Michelle's work or can work to highlight the social justice disparities that we are all witnessing so acutely right now?
Well, I think of, for instance, I think of context, I guess, and I know one of the things that that came up in the initial conversations that we started having with you, Michelle, in the beginning was about like speaking to different people, obviously, different women, different queer individuals, and also different types of workers. And I think at that point you were thinking about different types of workers, and then we had COVID, and then we started putting a little bit more emphasis on what essential workers are, or were, or can be, and things like that. So, you know, when I think about the evolution of the project, I think about the evolution, for instance, of the context of some of the questions, because I know part of the project is, you know, interviewing different individuals like Megan. I know that we had an interview session ourselves, and other individuals too that you've spoken to, like essential workers, or like medical assistants and things like that. And I think the context of the questions themselves that inform some of these lyrics of the songs have changed a little bit in response to what we're looking at right now, you know. And I think, you know, to what Megan was saying about programming, you know, they definitely felt that and have thought about that in terms of, you know, are we putting on programs for putting on programming's sake, or are we taking a step back and really thinking about like what is true to the nature of our own identities, right? And I think that that's been a part, or I've seen part of that take shape in the work that Michelle and Rico have presented to us, as whereas it's also about like, okay, let's stop right now, take a breath, and like really think about what the messaging is. And I think, you know, when we look at the context of things going on around us, that's super important, and that some of that we've seen in the project's lyrics themselves, you know, like, so, you know, take some time after this call and like go back to the lyrics and listen to them, and, you know, and you'll be able to see some of those influences of what's going on around us in those lyrics and in that music.
Yeah, that's actually a good, that reminds me to jump in and say that if anyone wants to share this after the fact or review it, it will be available on our YouTube live feed in perpetuity. Great. So, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I just think in terms of mutual aid, because it has been on my mind a lot, that what Richard just said is so, it's something I didn't realize was also on my mind until he articulated it, but how mutual aid really does have to do with starting by looking inward, and similar to what the way you guys were describing self-care. It's like you have to stop and check in with yourself and really identify what it is you have to give and how it's going to happen, whether it's giving back to yourself or giving to the world, and to put a plan in place that's sustainable, that isn't like, oh, I'm just going to send $100 now because I'm thinking about it, but then for the next 3 weeks I'm not going to do anything with my time that really makes a difference, you know. And I think a lot of people have this very polarized way of engaging and taking action, and I think our job right now, because we know we're in a time that it's so different and it's not going to change very quickly, that we have to put sustainable plans in place, and it requires a different way of thinking and relating to one another. So I'm really actually very excited by that, and very yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of potential right now, and we should take advantage of it.
I completely agree with that, Megan. And, you know, I think these are things too that it's like, they're not going to happen immediately, right? You know, it's not like an immediate gratification kind of thing where, you know, when we think about they're essentially, you know, trust building relationships, right? And, you know, how long has it taken for you, for instance, to be in a space like Ridgewood and build that trust with the community? And you know, like, these are questions that, you know, like as program managers or arts administrators, that, you know, are definitely questions that are pertinent to the kind of work that we do and those building of relationships and understanding that they're going to take time. How's it been in terms of the time and building relationships with those individuals of the Ridgewood community? And then you mentioned a little bit in the video,
Yeah.
but in these like particular days or times, like what is that looking like?
I mean, honestly, I just felt grateful because I already had a lot of connections established, like that I had worked to establish them before I started my business. And then in the past 2.5 years, whether it was families that were coming and enrolling their children, or neighbors that I'm so used to seeing on the street and having conversations with, or the people that work with me that are from this community and that informed the programming and that helped design the program from day one. So there's always more connections to be made. And then mutual aid. I mean, there's a woman, I have to give her a shout out, Raquel Namuche, who is, she organized the Ridgewood Tenants Union, and she also organized the Ridgewood Mutual Aid Network. This is someone who has spent her entire adult life in this neighborhood working to really bring the voices of marginalized people up and to help them and to give them aid and give them what they needed, whether it was access to housing or just information or just a feeling of that they had someone fighting for them. And she is such a force. And meeting her, you're asking as someone that is relatively new to this neighborhood. I came here 5 years ago and I met her, and we had really difficult conversations about what it means to move to a neighborhood, to buy a home, to come as a transplant, and in a really brave but also delicate and really authentic way, she pointed things out to me that it was hard to hear. And I think that's part of it too, is this looking inward, whether you're a business owner or an artist or just a human and a citizen. You have to be willing to hear difficult things about yourself and come to terms with them and know that they're in you, and you can make responsible choices out of that. And so for me, it's just continuing to listen to other people that are different than me. And I think that's what collaboration is, and to make responsible choices, but in response to what you're hearing. You have to be listening first.
Yeah, that's a good lesson for everyone in this moment, to iteratively respond to constructive feedback, even if it's not always incredibly comfortable.
All like snapping here.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was actually, I'm not surprised that you had these relationships before, because I was just thinking, oh my God, you did it so quickly. Richard was asking how long did it take you to develop these relationships? And I feel like you have done so much in 2.5 years. They really hit the ground running.
But it wasn't just me, I mean, I'm trying to listen and be receptive. I'm trying to amplify, and figure out how can I turn myself into an amplifier or an organizer. But it's like you need things coming in that you can reflect out. And I guess, it's also, when you spend a lot of time making theater, you are so familiar with what it means to work with groups and listen and collaborate. And so I guess that I had just taken time practicing that. But I just feel really grateful that everyone that works with me and who is a part, even, I mean, I have to say, I'm about to reopen in September, and it's scary. Any business owner, I'm sure, can attest, like, that when you're opening your business in this context, you have to be so cautious about making sure that you're setting something up that feels safe, not only for your clientele, but for the people that work with you. And not only just safe as far as like, none of us want to spread COVID, but safe on like a psychological level, because we've experienced trauma together as a society. And if we're going to enter into something together, we have to be prepared to care for each other on a level that we're maybe unfamiliar with, And so I'm constantly thinking about I'm grateful that the people that are signed up, whether it's the teachers working with me or the families that are coming and enrolled, that they're all on board, and I guess that was from day one. Honestly, if I was giving people a tour for my early childhood program, I said, listen, this is new. I can't give you a philosophy that's wrapped up, in a box with a bow on it. We're building it together. And if you are excited by that, please join, please enroll. And if that makes you nervous, find another program. It's okay, And I think it's important to really be clear about what you have to offer, and then because then the people that do want to communicate with you, whether they're your neighbors or your employees or your clients, like they understand what you're representing what you're standing for. I think that's really important.
Mhm.
I want to just jump in and say, like, I'm having these conversations on what collective trauma is or looks like is definitely something that we need to talk a little bit more about. And this is a conversation or question that I asked my friends' kids, for instance, or conversations that have come up with my friends' parents, or parents of my friends' children, and who are 11 and 8 years old. You know, I grew up in a time period, for instance, where I witnessed the first World Trade Center bombing, and we have generations that are now full adults that grew up during, you know, post 9/11. And, you know, we have now this generation of children being born or that are being raised in, you know, this COVID era that, you know, I think is also worth having a conversation about what they're experiencing and things that they're going through. So it's great that, you know, you can have those kinds of conversations with parents and their children about these types of traumatic experience that they might not think of as being traumatic, but further down the line it might feed into something that they experience. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, I could talk to the three of you all night, but in the spirit of here,
Four of us.
well, that's what I was going to say. And that, you know, Megan, you mentioned that this is a sort of sophisticated arrangement, and the only reason it is sophisticated is because of someone that you don't see on the screen, who really held my hand and all of our hands through what is a live stream and how do we do this, and is running this behind the scenes. And I'm just so grateful to all of her work. I just want to give a shout out to Mary Ellen, if you can come out from behind the virtual curtain. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for helping put all of this together.
Thank you so much. And before we say goodbye, I also want to thank QCA. I want to thank ACP. Kelly, you're amazing. You've been doing an amazing job. Megan, it's been a pleasure working with you, and I'm looking forward to, you know, all the things that we're going to do, and we're going to collaborate. Richard, thank you, and all the art commissioners. It's been like such a wonderful journey to do this. Thank you for believing in this project and supporting this project. I want to give a shout out to my sister Monica, Domingo Lemus, Georgina Escobar. They've been working with me in the project. It's like you said, it's like I'm not doing this by myself. I had this idea and I'm building this because, you know, everybody's believing in this. So thank you so much. And everybody that, you know, joined in today, thank you so much for watching.
Yeah, and if you want to support what we are doing, all of the proceeds for this event are going to go directly to Michelle and to Megan to support Supermoon. There is a link in wherever you're viewing this, whether it's YouTube or on QCA's website, to donate. And I also want to flag that we are doing these for the next 3 Thursdays at the same time. Same virtual place. So if you want to RSVP and join us next week, we would love to see you for another ACP awardee in music composition representing Maspeth, Ridgewood, Matthew Shikele, who's going to do another event here, as well as stay tuned for what will hopefully be some sort of socially distanced premiere with Supermoon of the full Canciones for a New World in the fall.